commentary. We are exploring listening to albums. It is a lost art form. We took an hour out of our day. We switched off the phones, we switched off the computers, we did not answer the door. We sat down and we listened to the artist's vision and concept. On the table today is Ultravox Vienna. Released on the 11th of July 1980, Vienna was the fourth studio album by Ultravox on Chrysalis Records. It made number 3 in the album charts in the UK, number 2 in the Netherlands and New Zealand, number 4 in Australia, and number 6 in Sweden. Produced by Ultravox and Conny Plank, it was recorded at Rack Studios in London and then mixed at Plank Studio near Cologne in Germany. It was recorded in February of 1980. Anton Corbijn had shot the cover, and Peter Saville, who was responsible for the graphics of Joy Division, New Order, and OMD, was drafted in to do the magic for Ultravox. We see time and again with these synth bands that there is storied lineup history. Midge Ure, Billy Currie, and Chrysalis Records were new to the Ultravox name. Previous vocalist John Foxx had built a healthy following for the Ultravox name, and this meant that Vienna was a deal breaker for some early Ultravox purists. So we have to mention that Ultravox essentially started life as Tiger Lily in 1974. Warren Cann and Billy Currie were part of that initial lineup. Chris Cross joined Ultravox in 1976. Midge Ure at that time was part of semi-glam rock band Slick, who scored a number 1 hit in early 1976 with Forever and Ever. Ultravox put out their first 3 albums on Island Records with John Foxx as vocalist. The band were definitely building a name for themselves, but the big commercial successes weren't there, so the label dropped the band and John Foxx left to pursue a solo career. 1979 was a pivotal year in the formation of the band. The always busy Midge Ure was part of Glenn Matlock's Rich Kids, and he was temporarily a member of Thin Lizzy. Gary Newman, once again we see, is pivotal to Ultravox's story because Billy Currie was drafted in to play on the Pleasure Principle. Billy Currie and Midge Ure's paths finally crossed when the two collaborated on the formation of Visage. How are you doing out there? Are you still with us? Billy Currie asked Midge Ure to join Ultravox. All of these big synth guys loved Kraftwerk, so very often they had a lot in common musically. From a personal perspective, Ultravox's greatest hits was one of the earliest in my collection, and therefore the singles on the Vienna album have been in my life nigh on 34 years, so Ultravox's music has deep roots in my musical experience. So just in case there's any confusion, the classic lineup for Ultravox, starting with the Vienna album, is Midge Ure on vocals, guitar, and keyboards, Chris Cross, bass, synthesizers, vocals, Warren Cann, drums, electronic percussion, vocals, and then Billy Currie on keyboards, synthesizers, violin, and viola. Let's dig into the material. Astrodyne kicks things off. It's an instrumental. This track for me is borderline Ultravox Visage. This came first, I know, but it reminds me in some ways of Visage's Visage. This is not as clubby. The signature Ultravox wah-wah guitar is present on the second half of the track. I like Billy Currie's string work towards the middle of the track. As a synth pop piece, it's not bad, but Ultravox are definitely capable of better. New Europeans, this will put you in mind of All Stood Still's production values. It ties in with the album title. The dramatic middle 8 works great. This is textbook Ultravox. Again, it's not bad, but it's not doing what OMD does to me. Private Lives, the melodies for me on this album are not that great. The fusion of the guitar with the synth is searing but distracting. I'm not familiar with Ultravox's previous albums, but maybe there was an effort here to keep the original fans happy. It's not bad, but when a band does great things for you further along the line, sometimes the older material leaves you feeling a bit flat. Passing Strangers. This was the second single released from Vienna. It reached number 57. I know this song from the Greatest Hits collection. My favorite part is the percolating synth on the middle eight, which seems to acknowledge where it is in music history. This was released on 12-inch single. Russell Mulcahy had directed the video. This was a big deal because he'd also done XTC's Making Plans for Nigel, Vapor's Turning Japanese, and Buggles' Video Killed the Radio Star, which was the first video to be played on MTV in 1981. This song's on the right road for new romantic greatness, but it lacks something. Sleepwalk. The first single was much catchier and radio-friendly. The synth work is engaging, and Midge's voice really works well here. The trademark squalling guitars on the middle eight don't do any harm. It reached number 29 in the UK. This is the first song on Vienna that makes me think Ultravox was serious about having hits. To this point on the album, this is my favourite. It's not great, but it is good. Sleepwalk was available as a limited edition clear plastic disc. Mr. X, this has a Kraftwerk sensibility. I'm digging it. Warren Cann does the lead vocal. It's atmospheric. Billy Curry's strings are awesome. This is really good Ultravox and is a much-needed booster for what has been largely for me a body of work lacking excitement. Western Promise. The synth hook on Western Promise has more of an Eastern feel. I'm sure that it's deliberate. More Kraftwerk referencing. Midge Ure's vocal style on this track is the prototype for the style that we'll see on Rage in Eden a year later. Good contemporary production. Pretty good track. And then we come to Vienna, which is the title track of this album, and it changed Ultravox's life, and it changed anyone that was a fan of this song's life. It changed my life. It waited patiently at number 2 for 4 weeks in the UK charts at the beginning of 1981. Held off understandably by John Lennon's Woman. You know, this was right after John had been killed on Central Park West at the end of 1980. So he was having these posthumous hits in England, understandably, as one of the legends of the Beatles. So we understood why John Lennon may have held Ultravox off of number 1, but what we didn't understand is why the shitty, not even funny Joe Dolce's Shut Up Your Face blocking this masterpiece, which was one of the biggest miscarriages of British justice in music history. In 2012, Radio 2 voted Vienna as the nation's favourite number 2 song of all time. It was number 1 in Belgium, Ireland and Holland, number 2 in New Zealand, number 7 in Sweden, number 8 in South Africa and Austria, where of course Vienna is the capital city. Russell Mulcahy also directed this video. The band paid for its production after Chrysalis refused to foot the bill. Tight bastards. It cost between $6 and $7 grand. Half was shot in London, a lot of it in Covent Garden, and some in what is now a bingo hall in Kilburn, which was known as the Kilburn Gaumont Theatre. I found that very amusing. The other half was filmed in the city of Vienna, guerrilla style, and Lady Luck was not with them as most of the city's grand edifices were closed for restoration or hidden under scaffolding. The grave of Karl Schweighofer, a prominent Austrian piano manufacturer, is shown on the single sleeve and in the video. Had it been left to Chrysalis, this song would never have seen the light of day. Beware of people that pretend to like the song Vienna. There's a lot of them around. It's probably because the song is beyond their understanding. Midge Ure has never sung better. The atmospheric beginnings, the meandering of the synths behind the vocalist setting the scene. On the bridge, he refuses to contain his feelings. It's the way he shows his feelings vocally. Let's add on that this sold 500,000 copies and was the 5th best-selling single in the UK during 1981. So I think it's right up there with Don't You Want Me, Tainted Love, the big hits of '81, Vienna sat very comfortably at number 5. Remember, it sat at number 2 for 4 weeks, behind this dreadful record. The instrumentation is a revelation. The pacing, the anticipation. It has arrogance and pomp that it can live up to. In the UK, for working class people in 1981, this was a fairly miserable time. The key line in Vienna is, "This means nothing to me." The specials had a parallel ability to deliver the working class public's frustration. But what made Ultravox's Vienna an unforgettable classic was its looking and sounding so great as Midge Ure falls apart on lead vocals in this trendy, arty, orchestral soundscape. Vienna was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that will stand strong in my mind for the rest of my days. Unbelievably fucking brilliant song. Good job, guys. I mean, Vienna really, for so many of us watching this review, it's everything. This album without this song would not be very good at all. So the album definitely deserved to be called Vienna on the strength of this song. All Stood Still. There's quite a bit to say about this song. The version on the album is different to the single edit, which I prefer. It reached number 8 in the UK charts. It sounds like a post-nuclear romp. Dancing with Tears in My Eyes would later score on a similar subject matter. It had to be tough to follow up Vienna as a single, but I tell you this, I don't think Chrysalis were helping matters. There's no video for this song, which for me is a resounding vote of no confidence from the label, despite a mega hit from the band 3 months earlier. Also, I didn't like how Island slipped in a release of slow motion after Vienna, thus essentially buggering up the continuity of the Vienna album campaign. All Stood Still is decent enough. In summarizing Ultravox's Vienna, the Vienna album is where the Vienna single lives. Vienna the single will greatly improve Vienna the album's final mark. I like Conny Plank's production on this album, and I enjoy it when the band show how influential Kraftwerk have been. I don't always love the guitars. For me, they kill the frosty chill of the synths, which Ultravox are so good at. So the final mark for Ultravox's Vienna, 68%.